YouTube and welcome to another video. In this video I want to talk to you about unreleased Winx Club dolls. I'm going to talk about some Winx Club dolls that we know for a fact were supposed to get released and weren't released in the end. And I'm also just going to talk about some of my doll ideas that I just have in my head that I'm surprised about that they never made into it all, or that I think could have been a good doll idea. I'm mainly gonna be focusing on Mattel dolls in this video just because I know the most about Mattel Winx Club dolls. The later iterations of Winx Club dolls weren't as readily available in Estonia and nearby countries like Finland. After the Simba dolls were quite readily available here as well, so I don't have such a full, perfect understanding of all of the things that the other companies have put out. But I have done some research for this video obviously as well, and of course I have been a Winx Club fan for pretty much 20 years now, so I do have knowledge about the other doll lines as well, just not as much. The inspiration behind this video came from dollect.net, which is a doll collecting blog, and in March of last year they released a blog post about unreleased Winx Club Mattel dolls, and I really wanted to talk about these dolls. I'm gonna link the blog post down below and I'm gonna give you my thoughts, and I'm gonna talk about some other unreleased dolls as well. I'm gonna talk about Jakks Pacific a little bit as well, because Jakks Pacific has so many cool unreleased dolls that I just learned when I was researching this video. There is also a Winx Club and just overall doll collector called xCanadensis who's on YouTube, and they have a pretty big channel, so I was really surprised that I hadn't heard of them before because they do so much good Winx content. They own all of the Jakks Pacific Winx dolls, and they also own a lot of prototypes and unreleased dolls because they have a connection with someone who was a designer in Jakks Pacific. So definitely check their channel out. I'm not gonna go through all of the prototypes and things they talk about in their videos, because you can just watch their videos. They also have the prototypes and stuff, and their videos are definitely worth a watch. But I'm gonna talk about some of the notable ones, and I'm gonna talk about some unreleased Mattel stuff, and I'm gonna talk about whether or not I think it was a good, reasonable idea that they didn't release these dolls, and why they might not have released these dolls, or whether or not I think that we were just completely robbed. So we're gonna start talking about the blog post first. This is by Doll Boy, and again made in March of last year. And the first doll they are talking about is Prince Sky Pixie Magic. This was a Sky doll that was supposed to be released alongside with Pixie Magic dolls. This doll is pretty much the same doll that they did for Brandon. I feel like just the sticker has changed. Probably something else has changed as well. I'll put a picture on the screen, but also, you know, the pictures aren't like very big or huge quality. So keep that in mind. I think it's completely fine that we didn't get it, to be honest, because it looks very similar to the Brandon doll. Of course it would have been nice to have a re-release, but I completely understand why they didn't release it. Guy dolls tend to sell a lot less than girl dolls. Even as a kid, I definitely wanted to have nice boy dolls, but I definitely wanted to have more girls than guys. So I totally understand. It's not really anything new. He seems to have a lady here as well. So I'm actually completely fine that they didn't release this doll. I think they basically did with Brandon. Then there is a Bloom vanity set, which was originally posted by American Toy Coon on Instagram. I tried to find the original Instagram post, but the account is private. So this was posted by them, and in the photo there's a season 2 Bloom sitting next to a vanity table. This might be a really hot take, but I also think we're completely fine without this. There are several pieces of Winx Club furniture, and I like the other ones they made better. I like the fairy set where there was a separate Bloom doll with like a sort of sequenced silvery outfit. I remember that one we actually sold here, and there is another one where Bloom has a really pretty dress. And I believe there is like a fairy lounge set as well. I think that's separate. And all of these, I would say, are better than this single vanity. I don't know if this is a hot take. But especially if this set didn't come with a doll, and if it did come with a doll, if it came with this doll, then it's basically the same Season 2 Bloom that we already have, that I actually have as well. So it would have been this Bloom, maybe, if the Bloom came with it, and this vanity with like a Winx, winged-shaped mirror. The mirror is cool, and there seems to be a lot of... Oh, there's a photo of Bloom as well. Bloom is so into herself. She has a photo of herself. There is a lot of cool like plastic trinkets, but I don't think I would have ever gotten this, and I don't think I would have wanted this as a kid, to be honest. Now, if you're just thinking that this video is gonna be all about me saying, "Oh, it's actually fine we didn't get these dolls," now we're gonna move on to some of the ones I do wish we had gotten. We're gonna move on to the Winx Club Picnic line. This is one of the last lines that Mattel did. It was the last line that was sold here. I actually got my friend a Stella from this line, and I absolutely love this line. I think the outfits in this line are so reminiscent of Believix. To me, this is a Mattel Believix line, basically. And we didn't get a Musa in this line. And I didn't actually know until recently that we didn't get a Musa, because it was very common for Estonian shops to only have Bloom, Stella and Flora, and not necessarily have Aisha as much or have Musa as much, and we only had Tecna for the Save the Last Dance doll line. That was the only Tecna I ever sold here. So I always assumed that Musa was there because Musa was at the back of the box. If you purchased the doll, at the back of the box there was an artwork and Musa was there as well. So I always assumed that we just had bad supply issues. I always assumed that maybe it was somewhere in Finland and I just wasn't in Finland at the correct moment. But I always assumed this Musa existed. And then at one point I realized that this Musa is just a prototype and they never released the Musa in this line, despite the fact of like having her on the back of the box. And this, I think, is a crime. Musa is, actually all of the Musas. I have a Simba Believix Musa, and I also have 3 different Mattel Musas, and Musa is often my favorite doll of all of the lines. Just the clothes, the hair, she looks fabulous. And maybe this particular Musa might not be like the favorite Musa I ever would have owned, but like I would have loved to have had this Musa. I think this Musa is gorgeous. I think this entire set deserves a Musa. This is terrible that we didn't get her. I always just thought that we had bad supply issues. The next doll is Tecna in concert. Now the concert dolls I didn't see in Estonia, but I did love them. I did want them. And again, this was another doll that was on the back of the box, that if I had seen it, I would have assumed that it existed if I had seen the doll. And I also found out recently that it doesn't exist. It's just like only the prototype doll exists. Apparently, according to this blog post, there were shoes that were sold on AliExpress. Like a lot of sellers on AliExpress will have access to factories and then they make counterfeits and sell them. So there are counterfeit shoes available. Like counterfeit shoes have been sold on AliExpress of her. And then people started making their own customs using those. This is another one of those cases where I think we definitely should have gotten this doll. I think it's ridiculous that if you have the dolls at the back of the box and then some of them doesn't exist. I think this is absurd, because the idea of putting all the dolls on the back of the box is that you collect all of the dolls, and it's kind of almost like false advertising to me, because I'm assuming all of these exist. Tecna is like the one that they drop the most easily. I think Musa dolls are particularly gorgeous, and I think children would love to have Musa dolls, so I don't really get... Actually, I think Tecna dolls are gorgeous as well. I don't get either thing about like dropping a character, because like unlike with boy dolls, if you're a girl and you're a fan of Winx Club, I can see why you might not care that much about boy dolls. But girls, you're gonna want the whole club. So I don't really understand. I think this doll is beautiful. I think they should have made it, absolutely. And then there is this my-sized Bloom doll. They did to a very fabulous Bloom, which is very similar to that, which is like a huge, huge Bloom. And this is supposedly the prototype for that. It looks similar enough, yeah. So we basically got this doll, I would say. Also, not sure if we need this doll. I have seen it in real life. Not in real life. I have seen it in like non-promotional photos, and it looks wonky. Then we move on to the Trix and Specialist dolls. And these were shared by a designer. These pictures are super bad. I've seen them around on Tumblr and stuff, but the picture quality is super bad. So yeah. And here in these pictures, we see that they plan to have Icy, Darcy, and Stormy as separate dolls sold on these little separate packagings, and they were also planning to have Specialist dolls, and they were planning to have gift sets of the Specialist and the Fairy. Okay, let's talk about the Specialist first. I understand why they didn't do the Specialist dolls. Again, like boy dolls sell way worse than girl dolls. And you can just see this. You go to a store, if the entire line is sold out and there's like one specific doll left, it's usually the one boy that the entire set had. Like there is no arguing against the fact that boy dolls don't sell as good as girl dolls. So I do understand why they didn't make separate specialists, and while I think it would have been fun if they did, I completely understand why they didn't, and I'm not mad about it. Now, regarding the couples pack, I think that is a missed opportunity. I think as a couples pack, you're gonna sell the both of them as a couple. I think that's so cute. I wish that they have done it, and I think it would have sold better than separate specialists as well, because you have the girl and the guy there together. And I'm looking at the River and Musa, and I'm like, why? And also Helia, there's Helia on this picture as well. And Brandon, we did get a Brandon doll by Kyochi several times. So Brandon and Sky are the only two specialists that exist as dolls, and everyone else, if you see them, they're a custom. I think the couple set would have been such a good idea. I think I would have loved it. It would have been really expensive. So maybe that's one of the reasons as well. Also, I will like give a round of applause for Mattel and Kyochi and all of these. I think these are the only ones who have done sets with boys. Has Jakks done this set with Bloom? Anyway, all of the Winx doll brands that have done specialists have always given them real hair, and I love that. And it looks like in these pictures all of the dolls would have had real hair as well, and I love it. Honestly, Helia is probably the specialist I would miss the most. Riven looks really cool as well. I think like a Valentine's Day themed pack would have been so cool. Now on to Stormy and Darcy. I'm not super mad that Mattel didn't do them. At one point, I was super mad that Mattel only had Icy, because at one point I was a super big Trix fan, and at that time the only Trix dolls that were available were like the huge Gyochi ones. If I'm pronouncing that company wrong, I'm so sorry. But these huge ones, and these were the only ones available, and they were so expensive because they were Italian only. I own Darcy from that set. Jakks hadn't yet done these good versus evil packs, and all of that hadn't happened yet. But now there have been several iterations of Darcy and Stormy dolls, so I think at least we have dolls of these characters. But again, I do wish that they had like given at least one try with Darcy and Stormy as well. I do understand that, they're the bad guys, but I do feel like those might have been popular as well. They released Icy twice, so they would have had some data on how Icy performed. And thankfully later on we got loads of different Trix dolls. We have the Dark Sirenix ones, we have the Good versus Evil ones, there's even like Disenchantix ones I believe, or the ones with like their really cool sleeves. So there are Dusty and Stormy dolls, so I think that's like more or less okay that we didn't get them. But again, this is one of those ones where I do wish that they had really made it, and I don't think it would have been a bad idea. I think I'm most upset about the couple sets. I do wish that those would have happened, and also the concert Tecna and the picnic Musa. I think we could have had all the girls, and the Trix honestly as well. Now I said I'm gonna mention some Jakks dolls as well, and I didn't know until recently that the Jakks Harmonix line was incomplete, that they never released Musa and Tecna. We didn't sell Jakks Pacific dolls. I think I've seen them a couple of times in my entire life when I've been abroad. I think Tecna and Musa were supposed to be a Toys R Us exclusive, but then Toys R Us was like, nah, we don't care anymore. And they never happened, and I do think that's kind of terrible. Thankfully we do have Harmonix, Musa and Tecna. They exist as Simba dolls or Woody dolls, so at least they do exist. It's really crazy and really surprised me. I also found out that there was supposed to be a Jakks Pacific Althea Castle. I was actually really surprised that there hasn't been so many Althea Castles. When I was thinking of what to talk about in terms of those that were never released, but I think that they could have released, I was thinking Althea Castles. There has been a Mattel Althea Castle, and as it turns out there has also been an Italian exclusive large Althea Castle for the really big Winx Club dolls, which is kind of underwhelming. Again, xCanadensis has a video on that, so you can check it out on their channel. But yeah, Jakks Pacific was supposed to make one as well, and it's super sad that they didn't, because I think we're still as a fandom missing a really good Althea Castle. I think the mini Althea Castle is really good in terms of what's inside and stuff, but it's only for the minis. I would probably want to have that one the most because it takes up less space as well. Like, dollhouses take up so much space. I don't have a single dollhouse, and I guess that's a problem for other consumers as well, and parents, and yeah, so I do understand why maybe they didn't do that. And then also there was apparently supposed to be a masquerade line, which you can see a prototype on xCanadensis' video, and that, like, based on that prototype, that would have been one of the most gorgeous Winx Club sets ever. So I'm gonna be thinking about that lying in my bed late at night, because that would have been such a cool thing. Especially because we have some Masquerade and like Sweet 16 themed dolls for Monster High, and they look so cool. So I think if we could have had that, but in Winx Club, it's just... That is one of those places where I'm like, we were robbed. We were absolutely robbed. Finally, I wanted to talk about some Winx dolls that were never released, that were never supposed to be released. I have seen no prototypes, but that I'm surprised that they never like even considered, as far as I'm aware, or that we don't even have information that this was something they considered. Because there are some Winx dolls that have been released and that I've looked at like, who asked for this? If you want to make that is kind of maybe a controversial topic, but if you want me to make a video on that, please let me know in the comments below. Also, I would really like to do a video on Mattel Winx Club tier list, like my ideas on which Mattel Winx Club dolls are the greatest and which ones are kind of fine. So if you want to see that, leave a like or leave a comment, or if someone else leaves a comment telling that they want to see that, just like their comment, that way I'll also know. But talking about dolls that we never got, that I'm surprised that we didn't get, or that I think just would have been cool to get, Diaspro. Like, yeah, she's a minor villain and we're not really doing villains, but she would be so perfect for a doll. And she's one of the few, like, she's a fairy. she's one of the few fairies that gets a transformation sequence in the series that isn't a Winx. She's so pretty. Like, her outfits are so pretty. She would translate so well to a doll. So I'm surprised that none of the doll lines ever created the Jasper doll. There are obviously some really cool custom-made Jasper dolls that fans have made, but I'm really shocked that we didn't get a Jasper doll. Another character I'm surprised we never get a doll of is Daphne in her human form. Because we have some Daphne dolls of the nymph, and I do think that Daphne looks so much better as a nymph, don't get me wrong, but she's much harder to translate into a doll as a nymph, because she looks like ethereal and she's a ghost basically. But then they make her into a human, and they basically make her so much easier to make into a doll, and they don't do it. Like, none of the, like, obviously Mattel could have never done it because Mattel by that point hadn't been making Winx Club dolls in ages, but that none of the other companies ever made like a Daphne doll as well. Like, you might have even gotten away with using like Stella's face and just modifying it very slightly because they have such similar faces. Oh, so I'm just going through the different lines, and I realized they really didn't do Tecnas for a lot of lines. The disco line is another one that surprised me. Tecna isn't in the denim line either, but I don't know why that one didn't surprise me as much, even though she does have an official outfit for that line as well, so it is weird, because that one is also based on outfits that the Winx girls actually have. They don't have it in the series, but there is official art for all of them, and there is official art for Tecna's denim outfit as well. But the disco one especially, again, this is an outfit that exists in the show. She is in the show wearing these outfits with the other girls. Even though the outfits look kind of like Stella's, looks completely different as a doll. But these outfits all exist inside the show, and it's surprising that Tecna isn't in the disco line as well. Also, the disco line is one of my favorite lines that I have never seen in real life. The disco line is so cool, especially Musa and Flora and Aisha. They're my favorite. The disco line is so cool. Other characters who I think would have been really cool, but that I understand why they didn't make dolls out of, are Faragonda. I think Faragonda is, like, I think there are lots of iconic teachers who would make really cool looking dolls, but Faragonda is like the head, the mistress, and I think from a play perspective as well, like, people like playing school with their dolls, right? And like, Faragonda is the most important teacher at Althea, so I feel like her doll might have actually done pretty okay. I know that doll companies don't usually make dolls of older characters, which is a shame in itself. But yeah, I think Faragonda would have been a cool doll as well. I do kind of understand why they wouldn't have done it. Like, Jasper and Daphne especially kind of shocked me that they never did it. But yeah. I also think, and this may be a controversial take, because I do understand why they need to do the specialist dolls, but Valtor, I would have loved a Valtor doll. I've seen some customs, and like, Valtor just has such a, like, for instance, Darker, you can't really make into a doll very easily because he has, I'd say, a unique body, but Valtor, he is pretty dollifiable, and his outfits, like, I get that this is also my personal preference because he has this sort of Victorian look, but oh my god, like, a Valtor doll would be so cool. Like, Valtor looks good and he would translate well into a doll, and they never gave that a try either. And I get it, like, he's a villain and he is also a boy, so there are two things that make selling him a little bit tricky. But I still think that would have been such a cool doll. Also, apparently there were supposed to be Selkies with Serenix dolls at one point, and I'm also really surprised that they didn't do that, because Selkies feel like characters that were just made for the doll value. They don't really have value story-wise as characters a lot, I feel. I'm sorry, I don't like Selkies. So, are there any Winx dolls that you're surprised weren't made or that you would have really liked to have seen. This has been this video, and I hope you enjoyed. If you're interested in Winx Club content, I do Winx Club content semi-regularly. I also do other doll content, and I also do some convention-related videos. So if you're interested in any of that, check me out, subscribe, watch my other videos, like, all that stuff. My channel has been doing pretty good recently, so I would actually be very, very happy if it continued to do that. Check out my other videos. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye!